before we get into all of our roster takes, we got to take a minute to chat Christen Press and her retirement announcement, announcing on Wednesday that following the conclusion of the NWSL season, Christen Press is officially going to hang up her cleats and bid farewell to an incredible legacy. Not gonna lie, in my feelings about it, this is just like more of what we've been seeing, I think, over the last few years. There's this very, very special roster of players that we got to see dominate, for over a decade across the international stage, win 2 World Cups, and really were these integral players in founding multiple leagues in the United States when it comes to domestic professional leagues. And Christen Press is part of this roster of players, and watching her week in and week out, across club play has been incredible. And to just sort of see where she's been and how she has operated, kudos and thank you, really just filled with gratitude. Jordan, your thoughts on another great, hanging them up.
Before we go to me, Sandra, I got to go to you. Like, what's your top press moment when you're thinking about press goals? Because there were a lot of them. Is there a moment that sticks out to you that you're going to be like, that was prime time Christen Press?
Yeah, actually. There's a ton. I think there's some that are like at the international level. Like obviously the 2019 semifinal goal is huge. But I have to say, I think after the 2016 Rio Olympics, I think that was that first kind of really tough narrative that U.S. national team program was handed. That people forget about that was the worst ever major international tournament finish for the U.S. women's national team. They got bounced on penalties against Sweden in the Rio Olympics, and there were a number of players who missed their penalty kicks. Alex Morgan among them, and unfortunately Christen Press, and just like kind of like the devastating effects of that can have on a player's mentality, and how they have to maybe carry that all of a sudden into club play. But there was a unique scenario following that in which she returned to club and found herself having to take a penalty at the time for the Chicago Red Stars, and all the pressure that comes with that, right? But of course she nails it. So I think that game for me was pretty special. There was you can hear it quiet, you can hear a pin drop in SeatGeek Stadium, but a lot of dogs for Christen signs and support for her, and she was the captain of that team during her moments in Chicago, and to step up and kind of nail that, I think it kind of just is part of her legacy and who she is.
Yeah, I love that, because we're all going to think about that goal in the semifinal. I shared earlier of the 2019 World Cup, and I shared earlier this week on a podcast that I was working for the U.S. team covering the game as a fan, and I was sitting right behind her dad when she scored the goal, and I got to take a video of her dad celebrating her score, this massive goal in the World Cup, and what an honor that was to be able to share that with them. For them to have that moment that they could always look back on was just like, you don't get to experience that as a player. You never know what that looks like. Your family celebrating in the stands. So we're going to remember that. But I just want like a loop. I want just every single goal she scored where she cut back from the wing and curled it to the far post. Like, that's all. You could go for minutes just going.
So many of them.
There's so many.
Staple, right? Like, that's that iconic move, like the Christen Press cutback and banger.
Yes.
You love
it doesn't have the ring as like a trin spin, but it was her iconic move, right? And the game will miss that. She, I think mostly I'm just really happy that she got to leave on her own accord, that she got back from the injury and she got to say, you know what, I gave it everything I could give it, and I get to walk away. You don't know how much that means as a player when you get to walk away. And so, I'm sure this is not the last we see of her. She'll be around doing all the things that she does. So that's kind of the things that stick out for me.
For sure. For sure.
No,
yeah, she's a legend in her own way, and I mean, I remember when I was playing for Racing, and I don't think I was eligible to play yet, but we were playing Angel City, and I was in the stand, and I think this was like my first time actually like seeing her up close. And I'm not gonna lie, I think I was a bit starstruck, but it was just, it was really cool. And I think, seeing the legacy she leaves behind, it's incredible. And Jordan, and like you said, the fact that she gets to leave on her own terms is what every player wants, and and I hope she's extremely proud of the career that she had, because she should be. I mean, winning, World Cup winner, it's unbelievable, and what she's done for the game in general, using her voice, standing up for those. And I think she doesn't have to worry about what her future will look like after. I was reading an article, I think that was when she was on Good Morning America, speaking about what this retirement, is for her, what it looks like. And, she admitted that she's a bit scared, she's a bit fearful. And I think we all are. Like, when I retired back in May, I was super scared about what life would look like out, away from soccer. But I don't think Christen will have to worry about anything. Of course, she's going to miss it. But just because you step away from soccer doesn't mean soccer is going to leave you completely, and what she's doing, the company that she's created, very engulfed in soccer, women's soccer especially, she's going to have a really bright future. But she should be extremely proud of the career that she had. And I'm excited to see what, Angel City does for her. And I hope they send her off and, in a big old parade, because she deserves it. She's done everything that she could. And coming back from that injury, it's not easy bouncing back from an ACL injury. Like, I can only imagine what that looked like, the setbacks. And she came back and, she kept pushing. So I'm extremely excited for her, and congratulations to her on a wonderful career, for sure.
I hope we get to see one more banger, man. Honestly, I'll be selfish.
Yeah. If not, Sandra, her last goal will be that one where she came on and she scored like 20 seconds later after coming onto the field.
Right in May. Yeah. Which was an incredible goal. Again, another Christen Press stable. It's like wild. It was, like ninth on this all-time goal scorers list for the United States women's national team, as sort of this kind of non-starter. She was often someone coming off of the bench or providing that impact, or sort of that rotated starter. Right. And so it's wild to think that she scored all these goals essentially from a lower position on the bench. So Christen Press, one more banger. If you got it in you, we salute you. Thank you. Congratulations on your retirement from playing international and club soccer. And the U.S. women's national team dropped their October roster. Emma Hayes naming 26 players for this one. And before we get into it, one of the players that was being celebrated in a return back to these October friendlies was Trinity Rodman, who had been missed out on some of the more recent camps for this team since April, because she has been managing a back injury. And she has found herself playing regular minutes again for the Washington Spirit. But unfortunately, during a CONCACAF Champions Cup match, she sustained what looked like a pretty painful knee injury. Unfortunately, came out of that game ultimately with the leg wrap, with ice, and on crutches as well. So not great scenes, and everyone kind of waiting with bated breath as far as what an update could potentially be on that. There has been a small update. There's reporting out of The Athletic saying that it's a more positive prognosis, that the initial scans have shown a long-term prognosis, and that they're hopeful that Rodman come make a return towards the end of the NWSL season, which is, I guess, about as positive as you can get, considering the end of the NWSL season is very soon. The decision day is going to be on November 2nd. So I guess continue to, best wishes for Trinity Rodman in a speedy recovery for sure. But one of the players that was being celebrated in a potential return to the roster, but it sounds like she will miss these camps coming up for the 3 games against Portugal and New Zealand. But there's a couple players who have also made their way back. I think for me, Jaedyn Shaw was a huge catch to kind of note on this one, that she's made her way. This is the player that has kind of had to balance some time on the U.S. women's national team roster. She has been in between, really, senior rosters and U23 rosters as well. Emma Hayes and U.S. Soccer have really sort of relaunched this U23 program, and it has really become this essential component alongside the senior team. And we've seen U23 camps taking place concurrently alongside any of these senior windows, even to the point where we saw over the summer that the U23 played some European friendlies as well. And so she is someone who may be utilizing those resources that are available to her, and finally getting back into the mix of this one. Jordan, when the roster dropped, was there anyone across the 26 players here that kind of caught your eye, or maybe even a snub, someone that you were surprised didn't see make the cut here?
My biggest takeaway when I saw this roster, guys, was there are a lot of young players. There's 17 players on this roster who have less than 25 caps.
That's what I thought.
17 players. That includes Jaedyn Shaw, Kat Macario, because they've been in and out in Macario with the injuries. But this, to me, is saying we're turning a page. We're going forward. We're moving on, and we trust the young kids, that we feel like we have a really good group of youth that we are going to invest in for a full year and a half to say this is going to be the core of our roster. So I think for me, and Satara, I might be stealing your thunder here, but I got to go as a center back. I'm happy to see McKeown in there. Yes. I think she's been, unfortunately for Kayla Sharples with the injury, to me, it takes her out of Defender of the Year, because McKeown has played every single minute, every single game. She's been solid. She's adaptable. She can get forward and help with the attack. I am curious on that. Like, what is the center back pairing going to be? And some good options, but a lot of them being right-footed options. So I'm curious about how that's going to work. I think the big player that's not in it for me, and maybe now with potential injuries will be added to the roster, I hope, is Croy Bethune. She's just, with Ali Setnor being a 10, but also can play as a winger, and Emma Hayes has utilized her a lot as a winger. I think Croy would, could play on the outside now that Rodman, or if Rodman doesn't go into camp with this injury, and you bring in a player like Croy Bethune, who in that 10 position can just eat up opponents. Like, seriously, just so savvy on the ball, sees things differently. And I'm sure she is in this mix in some way or another, but just didn't get that final call for this camp here. So those are my big thoughts and my one snuff.
I like it. Anyone sticking out or missing for you, Satara?
Well, last time, obviously, I was on A3. I spoke heavily about Jalen Howell. I thought maybe
good shout
would have gotten a shot this time around, because when we spoke last, Sandra, when we were in the last episode I was on, we were just talking about how she just kind of, she's finding her footing a bit with Gotham, scoring bangers, obviously, and and kind of getting back into that groove that I think people weren't expecting from her right off the bat when she came straight into the NWSL from college. But it's taken her a couple of years now to kind of find herself, find that groove, and she's there. She's got the momentum going. So I was just a bit surprised that she didn't call into this camp. But Jordan, I think you were spot on with how the youth of this camp. But they said the youth are our future, right? So I think that's also aligns with the U23s as well. I think Emma has a vision as to what she wants, and I think she's not completely escaping the veterans, the seasoned ones like the Lindsay Heaps of the world, but you can tell that she's kind of gravitating towards the younger generation. And I think because she's looking further into the future. She spoke about the Olympics, she spoke about the World Cup. She's looking well ahead into the future. So it'll be great. But thankfully, one thing about these young ones, this is a talented group. So I don't think you'll have to worry too much. But is obviously kind of getting them into that rhythm of international play. Like you said, Jordan, a lot of them are a bit inexperienced, but with I think with a little bit of consistency, kind of getting that togetherness, I think this could be an amazing group. So it's a good group for sure.
Just one comment on that Howell shout, because that is so good. I think she's got to be in the conversation for midfielder of the year in NWSL. I had Gotham, Kansas City last week, and we said this on the broadcast. Vlatko Ananovsky to us said Jalen Howell should be called into should be called into the national team. He is seeing what she's doing, and it is evident to everybody. And so I'm glad you said that, because it is it is a shock with how consistent she's been and the ground that she covers. Jess Carter was like, I can't believe how much running she does. Like she does so much for us. So that's such a good shout. And I hope she is in that mix in some way or another, but just not in this camp.
I guess my question is like, what more does she have to do to compete with someone like Sam Coffey? And,
right.
I mean, she's doing everything that she should be doing, and then some. So my question is, what more does my girl have to do?
Yeah, no, it's a fair question. It's a fair
question. I sometimes I'm just trying to figure out what exactly are those requirements in order to get called in.
I do wonder if how much of it is tied to like the timing of things. Like it's funny because it's like we've heard Emma Hayes be very, very honest and transparent in any of her media availabilities and say how there's a certain window of time that they're going to look at to start kind of narrowing that pool. But in the same line of thought, that emphasizing that something like the U23s is that extension. It's that extra arm of the national team, that in the event that they need to make sure that they need to pull somebody and have them be ready to make that next step, that they are there, that they are getting those experiences necessary to do that. But then you've got these players who are on the cusp or out of the cusp of that, right? Whether it is to your point, Jordan, a Sharples with maybe the injury coming into play and the timing of that and not getting that call, or Jalen Howell in this capacity, aged out of that, where it's like, okay, we can't get her in the U23s, but we also, for some reason, can't get her on the senior team for right now, which is kind of, I think this is where the frustration kind of comes in a little bit. And I mean, to Sharple's credit, I was kind of impressed by how many times she was name dropped by Emma Hayes specifically in her press call about the roster drop, and unprompted, like just was like, Kayla Sharple this, Kayla Sharple's that. And I'm just like, well, you are obviously doing something correct.
Yeah.
U.S. Women's National Team head coach is bringing you up unprompted in these moments, and ultimately saying it came down to a choice between like a Sharples or a Kennedy Wesley, and Wesley has made this roster, but it's also completely unfair to bring up somebody in Howell when you look at that midfield that got called in. I am also very curious if maybe that does open the door for someone like Howell, in that the injuries that we are seeing, whether it's Robin, who is now unavailable for this window, or whatever the update will be on an Emily Fox, because part of Emma Hayes' discussion in her call was also the fact that they chose 26 players because they wanted to keep in mind the NWSL playoffs, the congestion of the calendar at this moment, the intensity of the calendar in this moment, and the fact that there is that playoff push, and the fact that there's 3 games in this match in this international window as opposed to the regular kind of 2 friendlies. So they want to have a larger pool of players to rotate from and manage those minutes. So I have to imagine that if with Robin out and potentially more, that maybe there will be other players who do end up getting that phone call after all. Maybe it sounds like we all think it should be Jalen Howell. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see moving forward for sure.